All right, moving forward, last week on Cross Functionality, Cassie Riley Bosch and we debunked some hitting misconceptions that have been developed over the years, past and present. And the one point that we touched on, Ep, is technology and how technology now has really been able to debunk a lot of those past myths and now the present day misconceptions as well. And coaches now have the ability, with applicable evidence based off that technology, to debunk those myths, to debunk those misconceptions, and to teach players the correct way to actually hit and kind of filter out those past misconceptions.
Yeah, it's always in the eyes of the beholder. It's always how that coach is using that technology. I watched Albert Pujols do a demo on MLB Network where he took the knob straight down to the ball. Albert Pujols never looked like that, ever. He was never in that position in real life in a swing. Like you could look at thousands of videos of his hits, 3,000 of them, right? I mean, you could look at every one of his hits, and not one position would look like he looked while demonstrating, but that's what he thought. So that's what worked for him. So you're right. You have to be careful. You can say this is the perfect path that we want to build, and this path and these moves by video evidence is kind of how it started, at least with me in the early 2000s. It was like I used video to kind of watch everyone and how did it work, and then you get some sensors, and then you get kinematic sequencing sensors to see how the body moves in relation to the bat. And you have all these things, but it's also like, well, how do you get there? What is the path to get there? So, for instance, you get the guy that wants you to snap the barrel back and launch your swing on one leg, right? Like, if you were to look at that and be like, and look at sensors, right, kinematic sequencing, you'd be like, well, that doesn't work on the kinematic sequencing says that that's not wrong. You have to, whatever, have both feet on the ground and yada, yada. But maybe those moves work in teaching a player to actually do it right, even though it's kind of weird when you just see it. Or if you have somebody that says, I want you to swing straight down to the ball. Well, we know that nobody really swings straight down to the ball. I mean, sometimes I saw Hank Aaron his barrel was above the ball right before contact, and then it was right below the ball or the plane after contact. I'm like, okay, like he swung down maybe a little bit, or maybe he was level to the ground. But if you put a sensor on, it's like, well, you got to be 5 to 15 degrees, right? You want to be 10 degrees up for most of the time. So again, technology is great, tools are great, but if you don't have a brain, maybe AI will just take over and teach everybody how to hit. But if you don't have a brain and you don't know how to use that technology to get a player to change, whether it's up, down, in, out, left, right, whatever it is, then it doesn't matter. Like, for instance, like Blast. I like Blast. I use Blast. I don't use it a ton because there's a lot of variables that kind of go into what you can look at and where the pitch is and where contact was made or whatnot. But Blast marketed their product to Bill. There's no 11-year-olds named Bill. Who am I kidding? To Tanner, the 11-year-old kid and the dad, and to say, you put this knob on there, and if you swing and it's in the green zone, then you did it right. But you can't use that device like that.